Well, I had the privilege of serving on the Second Court of Appeals with Justice Bob McCoy for over 4 years, and now have the honor to interview him. So we will begin. Judge McCoy, what first made you decide to become a lawyer?
Well, I was an engineer in Houston beginning in 1972, and after doing that for 8 or 9 years, I decided that I wanted to do something else. So I saw an ad in the newspaper that the CIA wanted analysts, and being young and naive, I thought the CIA actually wanted analysts. But after going through various tests and interviews, I was flown to Washington, and it finally occurred to me they weren't looking for analysts, they were looking for operatives, spies, agents. So after I interviewed in Washington, they said they were going to offer me a job subject to passing a physical, and implied that my first posting would be Jakarta, Indonesia. So sort of the bloom had come off the rose at that point, and I decided that really wasn't what I was going to do. So I was still ready to make a change, and I was dating Joe Jamail's niece. And she was in law school, and she was always talking about how fun and interesting law school was. So it put it in my mind, why don't I apply to law school? So I did, and I was accepted, and I started night school at the University of Houston while I kept my engineering job.
Very interesting. I didn't know any of that. So when did you first decide that you might want to become a judge?
I guess I'd been an attorney at Shannon Gracie. In fact, David Keltner, former justice of the Court of Appeals, is the one that hired me to come to work at Shannon Gracie. I had been there about 12 or 13 years, and I tried a case in a court whose judge will remain unnamed, but it was very obvious that there was something going on beside the case, because whenever I would make an objection, it would be overruled, and if opposing counsel made the same objection, it would be sustained. And I later learned that there had been some things going on in the background prior to me trying that case, and so I decided, you know what, I can do a better job than this. And so that put in my mind to attempt to become a judge. In fact, I ran in 1993 and I lost. And I was under the naive impression that, well, if you had the lawyers behind you, which I did, you would undoubtedly win the primary. Well, of course, I had forgotten or did not know that it was the Republican primary. It wasn't the lawyers' primary. So after I lost in that primary, I put myself to work getting ingrained in the political spectrum of running for office. And then the next time, while I was running again for a different spot, and then I was appointed to a vacancy in the 48th District Court by then Governor Bush.
And how long did you stay there?
I was there from 1995 until 2003.
So after becoming a trial judge, what made you think that you might want to become an appellate justice?
Upon reflection, I've often asked myself that question. But at the time, it seemed like the natural progression of, well, you've been a trial judge, and so you know what preserving error is about, and so forth and so on. And so it just seemed natural that if you're a trial judge, you should want to go on the appellate bench. And then I was fortunate enough, when there was an opening on the appellate bench, that then Governor Perry appointed me to the Second Court of Appeals.
And how long were you on the Second Court of Appeals?
Well, I was there from the fall of 2003 until a couple of months ago in January the 1st of 2015.
And what did you find most rewarding about being an appellate judge?
Maybe rewarding isn't the right, let's say I'll answer a different question. The thing that I found most interesting about being on the Court of Appeals was that we had the waterfront a variety of cases. When you're on the trial bench in Tarrant County, the district courts, of course, are separated by the types of cases that they hear. I was in a civil court. But on the Court of Appeals, you have the waterfront of civil, criminal, family, everything. And so I found that interesting and intellectually stimulating to learn the various areas of the law, particularly those of which I was not familiar.
What would you say that you found least interesting, or was your least favorite part of being an appellate judge, just to be honest?
Oh, the isolation. It's equivalent to being in the monastery library 24/7. I could sit in my office the entire day and no living being would enter into my office, and I might or might not receive a phone call. And since I'm a people person, that was difficult. Although I was there for 11 years, so it got more difficult as time went by, let me put it that way.
Okay. So do you have any advice for anyone who is interested in becoming an appellate judge?
Yes, I think if you're interested in becoming an appellate judge, you need to think about the working environment, which is totally different from most lawyers and certainly all trial judges. That is, you are functioning by yourself. You are not really collaborating with other judges, collaborating with other lawyers. You're there to do a job alone. And so you need to think about that. That is the working environment before you really want to become an appellate justice.
Okay. And what do you think would help someone, let's say they work through that, and they want to become an appellate judge? What do you think would help them achieve that?
Well, becoming a judge in general is a political animal. And so in Texas, you have to become involved in politics, whether you're seeking an appointment or whether you're seeking to run for office. And of course, the appellate court is more difficult because we have 12 counties. So you have to get your name out there and your face recognizable, not just in Tarrant County, but in 12 counties.
So why did you decide to run for the county criminal bench?
Well, as I said, I am a people person, and I wanted to get back dealing with people. Also, criminal cases are generally more interesting than civil cases. So if you're on the criminal bench, you are dealing with people day in and day out, and that's what I was seeking. And now I've been there about 6 weeks, and I really enjoy it.
What is it you enjoy about it?
You're dealing with people. Because it's a misdemeanor court, of which I'm the judge, you are dealing with not hardened criminals, and so you can talk to them on a face-to-face basis and at least hope in some instances you might make a difference in their future.
Okay.
And you get to use your judgment as to, let's say, punishment fits the crime, which I find interesting.
Is there anything about the appellate court that you miss? Like maybe the people you worked with?
I miss working with you, Justice Gabriel.
Okay, I'm glad we got that out. You're best known for wearing bow ties, writing your article for the local bar journal, and your Great Danes. Why don't you tell us something about that?
Probably about 1997 or 8, a lawyer whose identity I've forgotten came into the 48th District Court wearing a bow tie. And of course, back then, no one wore a bow tie. And he was whoever it was about the same build that I was. He was like about 6 feet, and he was kind of slender, and he looked good wearing a bow tie. And so it put in my mind, he looks good wearing a bow tie. I think I could wear a bow tie. The problem in 1997 or 8, whenever that was finding a bow tie. You didn't go to a department store. There were no bow ties. So anyway, I found a magazine called Ben Silver, and they had entire catalogs of bow ties. So I ordered one bow tie, tried it out, I liked it, ordered several bow ties, and so I have not worn a regular tie since the late 90s. And I probably have 85 or 90 bow ties.
Well, it's definitely your signature style.
Well,
So you've been writing the article for the Bar Journal for how long?
I started in 1997. I think Wade McMullen was the president of the bar back then, and I don't, or that is, yeah, he was the president of the Bar Association. And as I remember, the Bar Journal back then had very little substantive content. Not that my article was going to be substantive content, but I mean, it just didn't have much in it about the law. And so I really don't remember where I came up with the idea to do what was originally called From the Civil Side. But the very first one, I think, was in March of '97. And it had I think all it had was 6 little snippets from civil cases. And so then over the years, it's evolved to where we have Ask the Danes and various and sundry other items in the article. And it's now civil and criminal.
Okay.
Well, but I've been doing it since '97.
So that leads us into the Great Danes, because they
Great
are
Danes.
A part of your article. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, I've always had dogs, and I don't really remember, and I've always liked big dogs. And I don't remember exactly how I transitioned from having Rhodesian Ridgebacks to Danes, but somewhere around 2002, I got Caesar, who was my first Great Dane. And so since then, I've had exclusively Great Danes, and I always have 2 so that they have an equal buddy to play with. And I intend to always have Great Danes as long as I'm physically able. So somewhere along the line, I got the idea that we would have Ask the Danes, and they would have an animal law question they answered each month in the Bar Journal article, and we have Danes Quote of the Month. And I think most people like that. That's the thing that I get the most positive comment on about the article.
Okay. How long have you been teaching here at the law school?
I started here in '99, so that would be about 16 years. And I've taught pretrial procedure each semester, or each year, once a year. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I had this idea that young lawyers didn't learn the hands-on, physically what do you do of practicing law. So I came up with this course called Courthouse Perspectives, where we go to each type of court in Tarrant County, from federal court to Justice of the Peace Court, and we learn, where do you sit when you come in? You check in with the bailiff. Who is the court coordinator? Who is the clerk? What do they do? What is your interaction with them? Before we had e-filing, how do you file something? How do you pay for it? Will they take a personal check? All these sort of hands-on things that you don't get to do or don't learn in law school. Plus, we always talk to a judge of the court. And so whoever the judge, if we go to JP Court, we'll have a Justice of the Peace come and talk to us about what the court does and sort of tips of to do and not to do in the court. And I can only do 15 students because I'm actually taking them around, and 15 is enough. And I think it was last semester or semester before last, we had 53 people sign up, but we only take 15 because that's all I can physically manage. So, and I hope to keep teaching here for as long as they'll have me. And once I retire, I'd like to just teach. I enjoy teaching.
And you also teach civil procedure here, right?
Texas pretrial procedure.
Texas pretrial procedure. Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions that we had in mind, but if there's anything else that you would like to say to end this interview, then you have open reign to do so.
I guess to people that are thinking about going to law school, I would say law school isn't hard, but the amount of material, new material, is massive. And so the key to succeeding in law school, and I think succeeding as a lawyer, is that you've got to be organized because you've got so much massive material. You've got to be diligent in getting through them, And like in any other profession, you've got to work hard. So if you'll be diligent, organized, and work hard, I think you'll succeed in law school and you'll succeed as a lawyer, as I'm sure you know, Justice Gabriel.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for sharing your experience and your time with us, and that concludes this interview.